Hi, I'm Jason. Welcome to my workshop, and welcome to part 3 of my series where I build a shaker-inspired table. And the person who inspired me to build this table was Norm Abram of the New Yankee Workshop, a fantastic show that ran on PBS for 20 years. And he designed and built this table. I don't sell the plans, but I'll leave a link in the description below where you can download those for yourself if you decide you want to build this table. So if you watched part 1 of the series, you saw me make these legs. I routed mortises, which will accept the tenons for the rails, and you watched me make the tapers for each of these legs. So today what I'll be doing is making the tenons on the rails that'll go in these legs. So the tenons need to be 3/4 of an inch long, and when I'm done milling them, they need to be 3/8 of an inch thick. And I'll do that using a dado stack in my table saw. So I'm all done cutting the tenons and I've got a decision to make. My mortises have rounded ends because I cut those on the router table, and my tenons have square ends. So do I square up the mortises or do I round over the tenons? I think it's going to be easiest if I just pare away the corners on the tenons using a good sharp chisel. And now I'm just fine-tuning the ends with a file. Okay, let's check the fit. And that is perfect. Okay, so one of my tenons doesn't want to quite fit into the mortise, and that's because I don't have uniform thickness across the length of that tenon. No matter how accurate I try to be with the dado stack on the table saw, that just happens sometimes. So I'm going to shave a little bit away using my shoulder plane. It's got an iron that runs all the way from side to side so that I can get tight to the shoulder right here. And I'm just going to shave away a little bit of material. That's really good. That's a good slip fit. I don't want to take any more off than that, or I'll have trouble with the glue up. So let's do the rest. So it's really starting to look like a table now. I've got it clamped up dry just so you could see what it looks like. And what I'm actually going to do now is take it out of the clamps and sand all of the pieces before I do my glue up, because I think it'll be easier that way. So I'm all done sanding, and I went all the way to 220 grit. And the reason is I'm not going to be staining this project. If I were going to stain it, I would have stopped at 150, so the stain would have soaked in better. So that's all done. Everything's buttery smooth, and I'll have a little bit of touch-up sanding probably when I'm all done. So I'm ready to glue up now. And I double-checked the fit of my mortise and tenon joints, and it's a good thing I did, because this one, I think I got a little bit carried away with the shoulder plane. So I'm not going to use regular glue. I'm actually going to use a 2-part epoxy adhesive. The great thing about epoxy is it's super strong, it's waterproof, and it also has gap filling properties. So I don't have to worry about this thing ever becoming a wobbly joint or pulling apart. And I'll put some in the mortise first. And now I'll put some on the tenon. All right, so we'll push this in. Some squeeze out on the front. I'll get that off with some acetone. Squeeze out on the back I'm not worried about because I'll never see. All right, looks good. So I went ahead and used epoxy on all the mortise and tenon joints. I had it all mixed up, so why not? And I got everything clamped up, and I waited 72 hours because the instructions say that's how long it takes for it to fully cure. And after I had clamped everything, I took my tape measure and I measured my diagonals from corner to corner to make sure that everything was totally square. And I was a little bit long between these two corners, so I took my longest pipe clamp and pulled these together a little bit, and now everything is square. And to make sure everything stays square, I'm going to cut and install some corner blocks. Okay, let's check the fit of these corner blocks. They sit in these grooves that I made on the router table before, and that sits in there perfectly. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue, and then I'll add a couple of brad nails to each end, and that'll keep it tight in there until the glue dries. And now I'm cutting the pieces for the upper and lower drawer guides. Okay, so now I'm installing the drawer guides, which are just 3/4 inch plywood. And I just put some glue on the ends. And those sit in those grooves too that we made on the router table. And then I'll put a nail or two in each end. So now I attach this thinner piece right here because the drawer guides are L-shaped. Okay, so with the lower drawer guides installed, I'm installing the upper ones. Just slip it into the upper groove, like that. I'll add a spring clamp there, just to hold it while I nail it in place. Okay, so the next thing I need to do on this table is build 2 drawers for it. And I'll do that entirely at the table saw. So I'll start with a dado stack in the saw. And then I need to cut a 3/8 by 3/8 rabbet all the way around the back sides of each of the drawer fronts. And now I cut a 1/4 inch groove in all the side pieces for the drawer bottoms. Here I've repositioned the fence to make the same groove in the drawer fronts. Okay, so not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous about this next part. I've built drawers before and I've used a bunch of different methods, including dovetails, but this one has me a little bit nervous. That's because it's a rabbeted lock joint. And it's a pretty simple joint in theory, but what complicates it, for me at least, is these are partial overlay drawers. So I had to do a bunch of careful measuring and marking, and I've got to remove this L-shaped piece of wood out of here. You can see it marked with my pencil lines. And I've got to do that using nothing but a combination blade on my table saw and the rip fence, and I've got to do it in a few steps. So I'm going to take my time with it, and hopefully it goes well. Wish me luck. Okay, so first I'm going to remove the longer part of the L. So I've got my blade height set at the right height, and I'm just going to run this through, keeping this tight to the fence on end, and I'm going to push it all the way through. You just have to be very careful that it stays tight to the fence and you don't get your fingers too close to the saw blade. Okay, so that actually went pretty well. As you can see, I've still got a little bit more material I have to remove, so I need to adjust my fence. So I'll just push the piece over the blade again, loosen my fence, and then tap the fence away from me a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to turn on the saw and make the second pass. So as I was making this cut, you may have been commenting to yourself that this does not look like a very safe way to make this cut on a table saw on the end of the board like this with my hands quite so close to the blade. And I would tell you, you might be right about that. What I would say is it's a common way for woodworkers to make that cut, and this is the first time I've done it this way. If I had to do it again, I would probably build or buy a tenoning jig so that the board would be nice and stable on end and my hands wouldn't have to be quite so close to the saw blade. So would I recommend doing this way? Probably not. And now I'm completing the rabbet by cutting away this little tab that was left behind. And that looks pretty good. And now I'm cutting a small dado in all the sides to receive the front of the drawer. And I'll have to do that in 2 passes. Okay, moment of truth time. Did I mention I was nervous? Oh yeah. And now I'm cutting a few 1/2 inch dados to accept the backs of the drawers. So I finished cutting all the drawer pieces to size, and I've got this one dry fitted, and before I glue it up, I've got to do a couple of things to the front. First thing is to route a chamfer around the outside edges of the drawer fronts. That'll make them look a little slimmer. And the other thing I'll do is create a couple of holes to accept some wooden knobs. Okay, about ready to start gluing up now. Just wanted to call out these shaker style knobs that I was able to purchase online. I did not make these myself. I'm not that talented. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in buying some of these for yourself. So I'm going to set these aside for now, and I won't actually glue those into the holes until I've got everything put together and I've done the final sanding, and then I'll put those on. Okay, so I am going to attempt to put this all together with no nails. Okay, now I'll put this piece of 1/4-inch plywood into the groove that I cut on the table saw. No glue, I just want it to float in there. Now I'm putting some glue in these dados for the back of the drawer. And then I should be able to just slide this right in. I'll tap it into place. Now I'll just wipe up some of this excess glue, and I'll start on the second drawer. And with the glue all dry on the drawers, I'll do all the sanding first, and then I'll glue on the knobs. So here's the tabletop I glued up about a month ago. I figure it should be dry enough by now. So I need to cut it to size, and it's going to be 16 by 48. And I intentionally didn't sand it yet. I want to leave the pencil lines on because that's where the biscuits are. And I don't want to accidentally cut through one of the biscuits, because if I do that, it's going to be visible on the ends of the board, and we don't want that. And I learned that lesson the hard way. So I've still got a bit more sanding to do on the top, but before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and route a decorative chamfer all around the top of the table. And to do that, I'm going to use a chamfering bit in my compact router. It's got a bearing guide on it. And I've also installed this offset base. And what that lets me do is lessen the chance of the router tipping over as I'm routing that profile, and it would spoil the edge if I did that. And I only get one chance at this, and this cherry was not cheap. So they don't make this one anymore, but you can get them for a bunch of different routers. I'll put a few links in the description below, and hopefully you can find one for yours. Okay, glue's all dry on these drawer knobs, and I can just slide these in so you can have a look. And that looks pretty good to me. So a couple more things I have to do before I put the top on. One thing I need to do is drill some elongated holes in the top of the base here. That way the top can expand and contract with changes in humidity. So here it is, the finished New Yankee Workshop library table. It took Norm 2 days to build this on television. It took me 5 months. What can I say? You don't want to rush these kinds of things, right? If you didn't see the first two in the 3-part series, I'll put links to those videos in the description below. And if you want to download the plans for this, believe it or not, you can still get them, and I'll put a link to those in the description as well. By the way, special thanks to Russ Morash. He's the creator and director of the New Yankee Workshop, and he gave me special permission to feature this on my YouTube channel, which is pretty awesome. So thank you, Russ. I owe you one. I hope you enjoyed this project. I had a lot of fun building it. Hope my wife likes it. That's the most important thing. And if you like this and you want to see more videos like it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell. That way you'll know whenever I've got a new video posted. We'll see you soon.